All right, so we took a little intermission. Now that we're back,
I'm a little less lightheaded.
Yeah, needed a little sustenance. I was on the struggle bus right there.
Yeah, I only had a bagel and a yogurt this morning, so when I was smoking that first cigar, I was like a little spacey for a couple minutes.
Yeah, we were supposed to get lunch, but then we got caught up setting up the.
Yeah, one thing led to another.
But now we got some new cigars.
Yeah.
Okay. We lit up the second cigar, and I'm smoking this is the Timeless Prestige Lancero that you have. And what is this, like a 6 by...
6 1/4 by 38.
By 38. Okay, so it's a little bit smaller than a typical Lancero, which is like 7 inches, right?
There's really two schools of Lanceros. Classically with Cuba, Laguito number 1, Laguito number 2. Laguito number 1 is that closer to 7 and change.
Yep.
Laguito number 2, 6, 6.5.
Okay. And I'm really enjoying
and always
this.
38 ring gauge.
Always 38. Yeah, because sometimes people throw in like a 40 and a 42, and I say, that's more of a Lonsdale. It's not really a Lancero. Lancero's the long and skinny ones. But it brings up a question that I had because I was asking you after I smoked the first cigar you gave us, which was the Suma, and I asked you, what cigar should I smoke next? And the answer you gave me was that you can really smoke any of your blends. And I find it very interesting because typically there's, an order to smoke cigars, and some cigar manufacturers will have you start with the mild, then you can move up to the medium, then you can move up to the full, which typically is how you would smoke your cigars in that order. But you had mentioned that you can smoke any of your cigars in any order.
Yeah, I think the idea is you want to still be able to appreciate nuance of flavor. And so to do that, it really comes down, to me, it's less important about flavor and more important to recognize body. And if you look across the Timeless collection and certainly across the Ferio Tego blends, they all share a full body with very different flavors. So even though we just had the Suma, quite full in body, but focusing on a lot of that more Nicaragua flavor, the chocolate, coffee, espresso, leather, to go in another direction, as long as the body stands up, then you should still be able to taste it. So you're having the Prestige Especiales that's got that great mouth-filling body with flavors that are certainly different from Suma, and so it's still able to stand up and detect nuance. You're having the Elegancia, so am I. The Elegancia we talked about in the first part of the discussion, it looks quite mellow, but has a lot of Nicaragua and Dominican filler, so the body is big, the flavors are different, and so it still presents an opportunity to layer new flavor, new nuance, and new experience on top of Suma. And so I'm a big believer in not necessarily going from mildest to strongest, but as long as you're diversifying flavor and experience, and the body stands up to the body of the last cigar you had, then you can go in any direction you want.
Yeah, because the Suma that we had, and like you had mentioned, the fudge, I was getting a lot of that dark chocolate, that leather, a little bit of spice towards the end of it. I was definitely picking up the spice. I mean, as the smoke was getting a little bit hotter. But with this one, the first thing I got right off the rip was sweetness.
Yeah.
Sweetness and
not artificial sweetness, not sugar sweetness.
Right, just a hint of sweetness, and I got some like you had said bread, and then as soon as you said bread, I said, yeah, I get toast.
Yeah,
it's almost like I'm a piece of toast for breakfast. Those are the two things that I pick up instantly on this cigar. And to go off of your point is, I don't feel like the weight of the smoke in my mouth is any different than the Suma, which is where that body is. Right, some people confuse this as another topic, but some people confuse body and strength. Right? Body and strength are two completely different things.
To me, strength is not something I try to achieve in a blend. Because strength, to me, speaks to nicotine, and it speaks to the way it affects the way you feel.
Right.
And I don't want you to feel my cigars in your stomach, in your head, or in your heart rate. You know what I mean?
Right.
I want you to feel our cigars in your soul.
Right.
So we really don't make ass kickers at all. There's lots of them out there, and you can go find one. They do them better than we would ever do them anyway. We really lead with flavor and lead with body. And body is not strength. Body is mouthfeel, and body is more specifically the weight of the smoke on your palate.
Yes.
And body is something you can see. So like I see you take a puff and the smoke is so voluminous. That's body, you know?
Yeah, and I can see that both of them have the same, and I like that. I like a cigar that's got a full body. I like the weight of the smoke in my mouth. Okay, I have smoked some cigars that have lighter body, you know, especially if it's like an early morning on the golf course or something, and I'll smoke something a little bit lighter, right? You don't have all of that food in your system, right? Which is another tip for those that are newer cigar smokers is make sure you have food in your system, okay? Because if you smoke something that might have a little bit of nicotine content, you're definitely going to feel a little woozy. But I do typically enjoy the ones that have that heavier body, like the Ferio Tego does.
It's the best part of the cigar, in my opinion.
Yeah.
If you don't have a nice cloud full of smoke.
Everybody loves a good body, you know what I'm saying? Like, come on.
I mean,
Voluminous.
voluptuous.
That's a college word, right? That's a 50-cent word.
Voluminous is a
we
great
call.
word. A nice easy draw with voluminous
So
smoke.
one of the questions that I wanted to ask you was the fashion, okay? And this is a totally different topic than cigars, but clearly you're into fashion, okay?
Yep.
Were you always the kind of guys like, hey, I always love to, I like to wear a suit. I like to, wear the pocket square. I like to wear the accessories. Or did that kind of just come with age?
It's funny because I would certainly not consider myself a fashion guy when I like as a young man. But like when you go back and look at pictures of me as a kid, I always had like outfits. And they were random. I mean, like some days I would go to school and I would wear, this like third grade, and I would wear, khaki pants, a blue and white shirt, a blazer, and a tie, and it was not school picture day. But then like the next day I would be in all denim or very, I don't know. But I actually think I think it was like, it was almost like a costume. Like what mood, what character was I in the mood to play that day, and what was the costume that was gonna make me feel, what's what. Certainly, as a jazz guy, there's a certain look to playing jazz.
Yes,
and because I was going to school and gigging and working, I started dressing nicer when I left my house to go to school. Because I never went home. So I would dress for my gig the moment I left my house to go to class. So I was kind of always a bit elevated. And then when I got into retail, especially in New York on Madison Avenue, and I always believed that you have to dress to your best dressed customer. And so at that time, 2002, 2003, everyone was in suits in Midtown. So a suit it was.
Yeah, I was going to ask if the Manhattan
scene affected it.
100%.
But I'll tell you, in 2003, 2002, a cigar brand called One Off launched, and it was owned by an Italian guy named Andrea Molinari out of Milan. And as soon as this cigar came out, which is now owned by Dion from Illusione, it's got the peace sign on it.
Okay.
When that cigar came out, I fell in love with it. And I sold it like it was the hottest thing. And we were so successful with it, the owner of the company asked me to fly to Milan to meet with the Italian retailers to explain what we were doing to sell One Off successfully in New York. And I will tell you that trip changed my life forever. Walking in Milan, seeing...
Which is about, I think it's the fashion capital of the world, isn't it? Yeah.
But seeing grown men wearing suits, which I saw in New York every day, but the cut looked different, the colors were different, the way they wore a suit was just different. Patterns, colors, combinations, that was a total game changer.
No socks, that's a big thing over there.
All of it.
Loafers.
And so I remember I had no money, but I went and I bought 3 shirts and 3 ties. And even though I still had just a navy suit and a gray suit, I started wearing these color combinations and patterns and stuff that were just, it was if you look at throwback pictures, you'll see what I mean. I mean, it's
Shocking in New York, but regular in Milan.
yeah. But then I did take it to a different level. I mean, I really like stripes and paisleys and polka dots and
Yeah, all of the fashion no-nos, right?
yeah. I broke every rule, and I didn't. It wasn't so conscious at the time, but what I realized was, as I wanted to be noticed as a young guy, 22. It was very difficult to be taken seriously and noticed in such a mature industry. And so by putting that costume on and allowing that to become my character, it got me noticed right away. So I was always in, anytime there was a cigar event and there were pictures in the back of magazines, I was always in them because I was the guy with the red pants and a pinstripe jacket with 3 pocket squares hanging out of my jacket. What I realized, though, as I got older, actually went about a year into Nat Sherman, was people recognized me but didn't know me. And so they knew me as the guy with red pants. They knew me as the guy with the crazy outfits. But they didn't know my name. They didn't know my story. And what started as a desire to be noticed ultimately became a barrier to become known because it was almost so off-putting and wild. And so I really changed my style in the early Nat Sherman years, 2011, 2012. Prior to 2012, I didn't have a white shirt in my closet. Like, not one.
Which is like typically the staple.
Right.
Typically it's the first shirt you buy.
Not a single white shirt. And I don't think I had a solid suit either. It was all just crazy. And I reset everything so that fashion could still be noticeably important, but not so much that it became the place where you stop.
Yeah.
And now it's still very much a part of who I am, but I think by toning it down and being a bit more thoughtful, it gives me an opportunity to be known, not just stop at the red pants and pinstripe.
Yeah, you wanted it to be, instead of it being, what's the word? You didn't want it to overtake like who you are. You wanted people to know you.
I want you to remember that I'm
right.
That I was dressed well. I don't want you to remember what I was wearing.
Right.
You're
like, I want you to know me for
evolved.
Michael Herklots,
Not the guy with the red
dresses
pants.
well, not
Exactly.
the guy with the red pants who's also happens
it.
to be Michael Herklots.
Yeah.
That's it.
The guy with the red pants.
But Italy absolutely changed.
No, Italy is, I actually
Everything.
recently got back from Italy, and we were in Milan for a short period of time, and you're right, and it's not even just Milan, it's all over Italy. It's the fashion is you're right, the way that the suits are cut, the way that the wardrobes are cut and fit is...
People, it's funny. People are like, aren't you uncomfortable? I'm like,
Absolutely
I'm
not.
not uncomfortable
No.
if I feel comfortable wearing this stuff. Like I made the analogy one day, like, tattoos are to Pete Johnson what a blazer is to me.
Yes.
Like it's just part of
Yeah.
just part of me. That's it.
Yeah, and it's actually interesting because when I was younger, I used to, and I'm sure everybody can say this, I hated when I had to wear a button up and tuck my shirt in. Hated it. Absolutely hated the feeling of tucking in shirt. And now that's all I wear is tucking in shirt, right? And when you wear it enough, it becomes a part of you, and it's like, this is just what I'm used to wearing. This is what I like to wear. I like the way that I feel when I wear it. So it's like, okay, and it's regardless of whatever your style might be. If that's what makes you feel comfortable and makes you feel like your best self,
That's it.
then wear that.
It's authentic.
Regardless of what it is.
Yeah, it's a part of your identity.
Right.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, I was like out of all my friends, we'd go to Atlantic City, and they would all be in jeans and Echo Unlimited T-shirts, and I was like in a blazer and
Echo
pants.
Unlimited?
Yeah, I'm just throwing it out there, as a throwback. But they're like, "What are you wearing? Like,
Is that like those Janko jeans? Remember those?
Yeah, of course, Janko jeans. Yeah, everything was Echo Unlimited, South Pole, all that good stuff. But I remember wearing a jacket out of all my friends, and they're like, "Why are you wearing that? Like, none of us wear that." I'm like, I feel good. Like, I want to be the guy that looks. Who's that guy in the jacket? Gambling on the blackjack table. That young kid,
Throwing his
suited
life
and booted.
savings on black.
Yeah, exactly. So it's your wardrobe is definitely a part of who you are and how it makes you feel. And then now, of course, after a few years, all my friends started wearing blazers and suits, and like, yeah, I like the way this feels. I'm like, well, welcome to the train.
So I want to, I do want to find out more about what is the next big thing, and where do you see Ferio Tego going? Right, we had talked about where you came from, how you got into, how you created Ferio Tego, what the meaning behind the name is, right? But what do you see it being 5-10 years from now? What's the next big thing coming out?
Well, we are a story unlike any other story in the business. We're 21 months old, 21 months in market, but we have now 10 core blends.
So hold on, pause for a second. You haven't even been in the market for 2 years.
We
and you have 10 blends already?
Again, a story like none other because of the work we did with Timeless and Metropolitan.
Yeah.
Those were brands that were established that we restored. So, I used the term identity crisis a lot when we got started because I had been in the business for 20 years. So people knew me. Some didn't know me but knew the brands like Metropolitan and Timeless that had been around since 1994 with Metropolitan, 2011-12 with Timeless. So those were brands that were known. And yet Ferio Tego was this just completely new thing. And so depending on where you kind of joined the industry, whether you're a consumer or retailer or whatever, you have a different perception of what this Ferio Tego story is. But now 21 months in, we're kind of over a lot of the catching up, and now we just are who we are. Mm-hmm. That 21-month piece is kind of irrelevant. The Timeless and Metropolitan origin story is kind of irrelevant. Now we are Ferio Tego's Ferio Tego. These are the blends. This is what we're doing, and let's rock and roll.
Yeah.
That said, in my mind, though, we're still 21 months old, and so there is a lot of work to still...
You're still the baby.
To still go do. But to add more levels of uniqueness, we're distributed by Davidoff USA, which is a dream come true, I think, for any new brand to have mature distribution is
Absolutely.
A dream come true. To take it a step further and have it be Davidoff USA, the global leading, luxury
like anybody who's anybody in the cigar world knows who Davidoff is.
That's where you want to be.
And we're in the book. That's a pretty substantial feather in the cap. So we've shipped, since inception, we're in over 1,000 stores. 1,000 stores in 21 months is bonkers.
Unheard of.
We're probably turning and burning in 500, like really succeeding in about 500 shops, which is still an outrageous number for 21 months. So to answer, that's a long way to answer your question. In 5 years, I'd like some of that to catch up. So the turning and burning in 500, but having shipped to 1,000, I'd like to turn and burn in those other 500, which means that there's a lot of work to go back to those shops, spend time with customers, spend time with retailers, and making sure that the story is really resonating, because we did move pretty quick in the first 21 months.
Yeah.
And so, I'm a big believer in, like we said earlier, you don't build a house without building a great foundation. The foundation's way more important than the house. And I think we've established a great foundation, but I think there is still some foundational work to go back and do. We're also generally only in the United States, which is the largest premium cigar market in the world, bar none. But there are some really important other markets. In fact, we'll have an announcement very soon about where we are expanding to. So we've just opened up our first international market last week, and a few more of those are coming. But I just don't want to be over my skis. This is a very long-term play, and I'm lucky. I'm 43 years old with 24 years in, and so I still have way more road in front of me, good Lord willing, than I have behind me.
Mm-hmm.
And we are a small family business in the premium cigar industry, and that's what I intend to stay as. But every small family business wants to scale. Someone asked me the other day, who are some of your favorite boutique brands? And I was like, that's a great question. I'll tell you off the top of my head, La Flor Dominicana, Rocky Patel, Drew Estate, And they were like, those aren't boutique brands. And I'm like, well, they are to me because they were boutique when I met Rocky and John and Lito, when they would come to the store with their bag and do what I'm doing.
Everybody that, any of these big names like Davidoff, Padron, Drew Estate, all these guys.
Everyone was small once.
Everybody was small at some point. They created their first cigar and got into their first lounge at some point.
I believe that there is a balance to be struck where you can still scale your business, but still preserve a boutique mentality. It's still preserve that level of intimacy and connectedness that I think some large brands lose when they scale. So where I see myself 5 or 10 years from now is to be a larger company, to have significantly more brand awareness, to hopefully, like we said in this first segment, to be a brand that is worthy of bragging about and flexing with, but to not be so big that it's just a brand, that people still know the story, know the progress, feel our gratitude, and truly feel connected to the story. That's ultimately where I'd like to be.
Would you like to keep it in the family? Do you have plans on having your kids raised in this? Like Lito, we had
barring that they don't become musicians.
Yeah. I mean, we had like Anthony Gomez from LFD. Anthony Gomez?
Yeah, Tony. Tony.
Yep.
He obviously, his father brought him in. Do you have any plans to show your kids the ropes?
I think
take it over?
No different than what we were talking about earlier. I want my kids to do what my kids want to do. I wasn't born into this business. I discovered it. I wanted to be a musician. My parents weren't working as artists. I mean, my mom was a art teacher. My dad, a doctor. But they had artistic endeavor. But they encouraged my sister and I to go do what we want to do, be what we want to be. Obviously, I would take that same approach with my kids. Should they find the love and affection for this? Maybe. I have a business partner, Brendan. He has 2 kids. Maybe they ultimately find interest in it. Who knows? But I think that's part of the discovery. It's not part of my plan. It goes back to being an artist. There's, when you're a songwriter, you're either writing the song for you or you're writing it for your audience. And to me, that's the difference between pop versus jazz. I mean, jazz is never going to be a hit.
Right.
Because it's too nuanced.
It's like the blues, right? Blues is number one. When's the last time you had a blues hit number one?
Right.
Yeah. I don't think ever. It's because the blues is more, they're singing to soothe their soul.
But you have to, I'm a songwriter. I'm a musician. I'm writing music to be better. And if you enjoy the work, great. But if you don't like jazz, you're not going to like the Michael Herklots Quartet, 20 years ago.
Exactly.
If you like really powerful, Ligero heavy, in your face, strong cigars, you're not going to like Ferio, at least not now.
Right.
You might discover it later and appreciate the nuance and the subtlety and the complexity, but I know what we are, I know what we're not, and we're just not that.
It's like, it's the same thing as somebody that smokes, let's say they love spice. They just love the spice. They like the Nicaraguans. They like, those type of cigars because that's what they enjoy. Doesn't mean that the Hondurans, the Dominican Republics, the Ecuadorians, doesn't mean that those are bad cigars. It's just, like you said, somebody that loves jazz is going to like jazz music and maybe not like metal. Right? Somebody that loves pop
like food. You can have the greatest steak dish in the world, the greatest Kobe, prepared with the greatest ingredients. But if you don't like meat,
right,
you're not going to like it.
That's it.
I mean, that's just the way it is. But you have to be thoughtful for each palate. I mean, at the end of the day, we are delivering something to the masses. And, there are some cigar brands that really stay in their lane and their style, their spectrum is here. That's not Ferio. If you look at Ferio Tego across the metropolitan spectrum, it's very old world, mellow, smooth, traditional, across timeless, more craft. But if you look at timeless from Sterling to Panamericana, it's apples and bowling balls from a flavor standpoint. And even within Ferio Tego, Elegancia, Generoso, and Suma are radically different. So I'm I'm definitely creating a wider spectrum, but the through line is the body, the balance, the elegance, the complexity.
Yeah, it's. I kind of think of it like like you had said with cooking. If you're in a restaurant, right? Let's say you're in a Mexican restaurant, you're not going to have the same dish 15 times on the menu. You're going to have all these different dishes, but the theme is Mexican. These are all Mexican dishes, but we have different flavors within the Mexican realm to please different palates. It's the same thing with Ferio Tego. This is our, Ferio Tego has this underlying body across all of the blends, but there's different flavors that might appeal to different people. So we actually have a couple newcomers I see that join. So appreciate you guys popping in, joining us for the second session. Do we have any other any questions from the audience from that weren't asked previously that might have come up during our break? So we had a newcomer come in and was asking if Michael is a blender, not just a brand owner.
Okay. Yeah, I mean there's no blending certificate, but all of the blends at this point I either created and developed or worked to preserve and maintain over time. But the ultimately, with the exception of 3 Metropolitan blends, these are all blends that I've developed since 2011.
So maybe you can talk to us a little bit about the blending process, because I don't know how many people in here have actually went through the process of blending, rolling a cigar, of coming out, trial and error. I mean, we've done it because we have our own cigar, but maybe you can talk to us about what does that process look like from the idea, like this is the type of cigar I want to make, to you finally have it boxed and in production.
When I look back at the first blend development, that was specific to trying to solve for X. So, for example, the first blend I did was Timeless Prestige, which is what you're smoking. In the case of Timeless Prestige, I was going for a specific flavor and experience that I wanted to achieve. And so that meant creating blends that I thought would get us to that place. But over time, no different than if you're a writer or a songwriter or a musician, you're also just constantly sketching, for lack of a better analogy.
Yeah.
And once we had a reasonable portfolio, the mission became less about trying to put X into market and instead preserving those experiences through the blending process, which is actually a very different topic, and remind me, because that's actually something that's even more important to talk about. But it went to instead sketching as much as possible and creating as many different types of experiences as possible, but never really finishing the work. And then when it came time that something was really resonating as interesting, finishing that work and bringing it to market. So in the case of Suma, for example, that was a sketch that I kept working on and kept working on and kept working on. And once it was complete, and it kind of went like this in its development, then we assigned it to Suma. Or I did a limited edition last year for a retailer that took, basically I went to the sketchbook, looked at a number of these different blends, and took 2 or 3 of them to completion, and then said, okay, this is the one that we'll apply to this project. So I do less blending from scratch to product now, and I do a lot more just constant blending and playing, and then when something really hits, say, okay, this is too good to leave in the sketchbook. What are we going to use this for, and how are we going to bring it to market?
So I don't know if we talked about this, but where are your cigars made, if you can disclose this? And then where is the tobacco from? Is it multiple countries? Is it?
So again, unique story for us. We manufacture in all 3 major manufacturing countries of origin. So we manufacture in the Dominican Republic with the Quesada family. We manufacture in Nicaragua with the Plasencia family, and we manufacture in Honduras at the Camacho factory. So there are very few companies, even the big ones, that can claim that they make cigars in all 3 major countries of origin. We do. And we have one manufacturing partner per country. So when we're developing a blend, we're obviously working in close partnership with them and their experts, tweaking, crafting, using their tobaccos in order to put something together. And then ultimately it's their job to take that blend and then replicate it with each production. But I was hinting at this earlier. When you're creating a blend, that's a difficult process. But infinitely more difficult is then preserving and maintaining that blend year after year after year.
Yes.
So let's say Timeless Prestige, for example, that blend was created in 2011, released in 2012. It was 2023. None of those tobaccos are the same that make up that blend. They're all different tobaccos, but the experience of the blend must be the same. And so the analogy I use for that process is casting. If you imagine a Broadway show that has been on Broadway for decades, use Phantom of the Opera, for example, is the one I use all the time. If, in the spirit of consistency, they never changed an actor, Phantom of the Opera would not be the same show today that it was in 1980, whatever, when it was debuted on Broadway, because the cast would be geriatric in wheelchairs and on oxygen, right? The show couldn't possibly be the same because the actors are changing. It's the role that they play that must be the same. And so that means that you always have to recast suitable actors to play that same role so the show is exactly the same. That's blending core cigars. So everything on that table out there, all the Metropolitan, all the Timeless, and the Suma, that is the example of constantly evaluating which tobacco is playing which role, and should one particular tobacco in that blend begin to exhaust supply, we have to do the work to find a suitable replacement that can play the role that that tobacco plays in that blend to keep it the same.
Yeah, that's a great. I mean, I discuss this a lot with people that are asking about the cigars, and I say, listen, it's you're dealing with crops, and crops have to they have to be grown, they have to be planted, they have to be harvested, right? You're not going to get the same climate every single year, year after year. You're not going to say, all right, well, I'm growing it for these 6 months, and I get the same amount of rain, I get the same amount of sunshine. It's impossible. So the crops year after year aren't going to taste exactly the same.
It's just like wine.
Like wine.
If you like this particular 2017 Malbec that you bought, when you go to the store and they don't have the 2017, they have the 2018, you might pour it in the glass, drink it, and say, yep, that's the one I like. But if you taste the 17 and the 18 next to each other, you might be able to pick up differences one to the other, because 100% of what's in that bottle is representative of 100% of what was in the vineyard that year. With premium cigars, by and large, we take the opposite approach. We take a non-vintage approach, which means that the experience must be the same year after year, despite the fact that the crops are changing. And so you have to evaluate the year and understand the role that the weather and climate played, taste that tobacco, understand how its behavior is similar or different to the tobacco that you're replacing, and then solve for that. Might have to be a different year, different priming, different seed, different region to play the same role.
Is there anything in the cigar industry that you see kind of towards that you don't like, that you wish could be changed a little bit? Like whether it's a process, whether it's a trend going on. Do you see anything that you not necessarily don't like, but wish was different?
Well, I think there are a few things. Number one, this is a product intended to be enjoyed by adults. Mm-hmm. And I think anytime anything is marketed or packaged in a way that could be attractive to youth is a problem. Mm-hmm. So, but if you look at the trends in other categories, everything is trending cartoonish.
Yeah.
We
had a whole episode about this.
Right.
I was asking.
So you can look at a lot of other adult products that are being marketed in a way that I believe has a youth appeal, and they are not getting the same level of potential criticism that we are. I just believe that we need to take a higher road and just stay as far away from it as possible. That's first.
Yeah, that's very interesting because we had a whole episode about this where there were cigars that were coming out that had cartoon characters. And we had said that, one of the things that the FDA, this is before the recent legislation came out that FDA now has to have certain laws for premium cigars as opposed to deeming them altogether. They had these cartoon characters, and we were saying there's no reason why we should be, as an industry, utilizing these images on cigar labels and cigar boxes because it just gives the FDA and the governing bodies more ammunition to come after cigars when we're already under such a a tight umbrella as it is. So it's like, why are we even giving them something else to go? We know that this is not marketed towards kids. We had talked about this, that kids aren't underneath bleachers in high school smoking cigars. So why are we going to give them something that they can instantly say, hey, you're marketing towards kids, even though you're trying to play to the nostalgic side of adults?
It's not worth it.
It's not worth it.
The other thing that I struggle with a little is the fine line balance of marketing and storytelling and lying.
Okay.
And I don't believe in lying. I believe in sharing as much information as you feel comfortable sharing, but at least make it truthful. And there is a lot of romance in our business, but a lot of that romance has now been trumped with absolute fabrication. Some of the stories on aging, some of the stories on seed varieties and other things that and I'm jaded because I've been around too long, but that you just know can't be true.
Yeah.
And then you see those stories being repeated from a marketing standpoint. That just bothers me because I think we all do better if we tell the truth, because then we're all learning the same thing and we're better consumers when we're learning the right way.
So a little false advertising.
Yeah.
Right? It's not exactly what it sounds like.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's always going to be a little bit of that.
Oh, and that's fine. But you asked if there's a direction I don't love that.
And I agree. I mean, people, I guess when people start doing that, it's like, do you really believe in your product or your brand? That you have to kind of start.
And last, I don't love price for price.
Meaning
you just make something expensive to have something expensive.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't like that too.
I'm a big believer. We all spend money on stupid stuff that we don't need. And sometimes we spend more money on expensive stuff that we don't need. But we all want to get our money's worth. Even if it's expensive, you still want to feel like you got the upper hand of that deal.
Yeah.
Whether it's a house, a car, a suit, a watch. You want everything back plus a little. And we work really hard on our portfolio. Even among our most expensive products, today that's $23 for Elegancia and Generoso. But I think you'd be hard-pressed to find another handmade premium cigar for $230 that performs at that level of sophistication and flavor, consistency, and quality and construction, and level of packaging. I mean, we package Elegancia and Generoso in handmade humidors that we make in Nicaragua. I think we're punching so far over our weight. And if you look at Suma, even all the way down into Timeless and Metropolitan, you get your money's worth plus. And I'm a big believer, whether I bring something more expensive or less expensive, it's always going to over-deliver in value.
I think we're probably coming towards the end here, but before we close out, are there any other questions from the audience before we wrap this up?
Do I predict another cigar boom? Yes. 100%. History says there always will be another one, and there'll be another one after that. There's also going to be another recession. There's also going to be more regulation. Lanceros are going to go away again. 70 ring gauges are going to be popular again. The cycle just keeps going and going and going. What I love about the booms, though, especially this most recent one that we had during COVID, most booms, there's typically ebb and flow. Production goes up and quality goes down. And what I appreciated about this last boom was, for the most part, quality did not go down. Demand went up, prices went up, consumers increased, but quality really stayed the same. And I think that speaks to the level of integrity that our industry's manufacturers have in their products now. We did not see that in the late 1990s in that cigar boom. That was a massacre of cigars. I mean, just terrible stuff.
Because the quality went down?
Quality was terrible. Terrible. We didn't see that this time. But every time there's a boom, when it normalizes, it always normalizes above where that boom began, which means that the trend enthusiasts go away, but that also means that a whole new generation of enthusiasts have joined this hobby and are taking it seriously. And the more disciplined, thoughtful, educated consumers and enthusiasts we have, the stronger our industry will be. And because we tend to evangelize this and share how much we love it, that's always going to result in another boom.
It's kind of like a moving average, just keeps moving up. Like you said, there's a boom, and then it comes down, but it settles here, and then it goes up, and then it settles here, and which is good to see. It's obviously
And
better
I
than the
also think
opposite.
The news, the FDA news, will also create a new boom. Because I said earlier, you're going to see more creativity in the next 2 years and more innovation in the next 2 years than we've seen in the last 10, because we've been handcuffed by pending regulation. Now that there's a clear playbook and we know what we can do and we know what we can't do, the level of innovation and excitement and participation and support, I think, is really going to enhance consumerism for the next couple of years, for sure.
Fantastic.
100% agree.
Well, Mr. Michael Herklots, we appreciate your hours of time.
It's been 2 hours.
Thank you for everyone who joined us in the crowd.
Yeah, appreciate you guys coming.
Thank you
very much.
And I'll tell you, if you guys, my only favor, and we touched on it earlier, if you enjoy a Ferio Tego, would you do me the solid of telling someone? However you do that, take a picture and post it. Take a photo and send it to a friend. If you're having a barbecue in your backyard and they know that you're a cigar guy, put a box of Metropolitans out there. When you do that, you are endorsing our brand. You're giving people permission to love it. And when people have permission to love it, they brag about it too. And when they brag about it, I got a business. So I would really, really appreciate
There we go.
step.
That's a simple ask.
Love it. Well, listen, Michael, again, thank you so much for joining us here on the Burn Down. Thank you again, everybody, for supporting us. We truly do appreciate it. And with that being said, we'll send it off with our signature
like we
cheers.
always say, we have no drinks here, but I have it on a T-shirt now, so it's official. So I like to say, and we like to say, cheers, chin chin, salute. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
All right.
Ferio Tego. Appreciate you guys.